Good morning and welcome to this hybrid meeting of Planning Committee on Tuesday, the 1st of August 2023. I am Councillor Jeff Jones and I will be chairing this meeting of Planning Committee. Just to make you all aware, today's meeting will be recorded. Can I also welcome any members of the public and press to today's meeting? Can I kindly ask you to observe the meeting and only and not to speak or participate? Please ensure that all phones are switched to silent for the duration of the meeting. Members, if you wish to speak or ask a question, please raise your electronic hand on Teams or physical hand if in person. I will now move on to agenda item 1. Chair's announcements. I can confirm I have no announcements to make. Agenda item 2 is declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest?
Good morning, Chair. I think I have raised my hand. I'm not quite sure it's come up on the screen. Can I declare an interest in item 6, application number T2023/02?
Councillor Bowen, is that personal or prejudicial interest?
It's a declaration. Declaration.
Sorry, Councillor Bowen. Sorry, can I just get back to Councillor Carl Jordan a second? Just want to check his interest, if it's prejudicial or personal.
It's a personal.
Thank you very much. And Councillor Jeff Jones, apologies. Do you want to declare an interest?
Bowen.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Bowen. Sorry.
Yeah, you declared an interest in item 6 as well. It's personal, and I will be leaving the meeting when that's being discussed.
So it's prejudicial.
So it's prejudicial interest if you're going to be leaving the meeting.
Yeah,
okay,
sorry.
thank you. Yeah, no problems. I'll make sure that that's happened at the appropriate time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other declarations of interests? I don't see any, Chair, so you can continue.
Okay, thank you. The next agenda item is the minutes from the previous meeting, which are included on the agenda for approval today. The minutes are dated 27th of April 2023. Does any member have any comments to make on the accuracy of these minutes? Oh, please, can I have a proposal and seconder to approve the minutes?
I propose, Chair.
I'll second, Chair. Just to confirm for those on recording, Councillor Paddison a second those minutes, so I can confirm those minutes have been approved. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Agenda item 4 is request for site visits. Are there any members wishing to suggest a site visit on the applications presented today? Or are there any requests for site visits in general? Please also let me know if you wish to call for a site visit at any point in the meeting. Now we move on to second A of the agenda, which is matters for decision. Agenda item 5. The first application we will look at today is application number P2023-0240, 9 Uplands Road, Pontardawe. The report is set out on pages 9 to 20, and this application is recommended for approval. I would now like to ask the planning officers to take us through the report.
Thank you, Chair. This is planning application number P2023-0240 for 9 Uplands Road, Pontardawe, for change of use of a single dwelling house, use class C3, to a residential care home, use class C2, for up to 4 children and their carers. This is the application site. It's a large detached 7-bedroom property. You will note from the report that it used to be a doctor's property. You can see the setting there within the street, and you can see the existing car parking on our plan. Included this just for an indication of the context in terms of the highway network around the site. you will see the property indicated with the red marker. So this application is for the change of use for a care home for up to 4 young people under the age of 18. So they will be living in the property as their sole residence, but they will have carers coming in all the time. So there's 24-hour care for them, supervision, because obviously children can't live in a house on their own. This is obviously to provide a home setting for children who cannot or are unable to live with their parents for various reasons. In terms of the property, there's very little change to the property externally, if anything. The existing and proposed layout plans just shows some alterations to the rooms. Each child will have its own room, and then, as noted in the report, they will the house will be run like a household with children helping, making food, cleaning, and eating as a family. The applicant is proposing 4 off-street car parking spaces, which is shown at the bottom of the plan there. And if you note, there's 2 other spaces that are shown as potential overspill car parking. There's also an existing access there, but in terms of highway provision, you will note that the highway section offer no objection, and the assessment in terms of parking needs and requirement set out within the report on pages 15 and 16. So that is the property from the road frontage. Again, other pictures of the property from an alternative elevation. Access gates there showing the road. Driveway and the garage to the rear. Garden areas. And I put a couple of pictures in. We've obviously received a number of objections on the property, and they are obviously all set out on pages 10 and 11, footnote to page 12 of the report. The application has been called to committee by the local member, Councillor Phillips, predominantly on ground of highway safety. Obviously, you can see that the road doesn't have any footways on there. And you would indicate, obviously, from the plan that I showed you previously, the highway network in that area. So in terms of our recommendation, we're recommending approval subject to the conditions. The conditions would require the car parking to be put in place prior to first use, and also restricts it to a maximum of 4 residents. We're recommending approval of this application.
Thank you. I will now ask the local ward member if they wish to come in at this point. Councillor Phillips, would you like to say anything?
Diolch yn fawr, bore da. Good morning, Chair, fellow councillors, officers and members of the public. First of all, I'd like to thank you for allowing me to join the meeting today and to speak on this very important application in my ward. As you will see from the pictures, Uplands Road is a steep cul-de-sac with a single restricted turning point at the top of the road. It is a narrow road with no pedestrian footpath. Access to the road is by a hairpin turn that requires anything larger than a car to make a 3-point turn. 9 Uplands Road is positioned on a blind bend. Access to emergency vehicles is already a big concern in the area. When this application was brought to my attention, I knew my constituents would be concerned. You will see from the report that there are 15 objections to the proposal, as well as concerns from Pontardawe Town Council. These are all, of course, people that know the area the best, and they do not think that the location is suitable for such a development. Parking is already a problem on the road, and whilst I appreciate the applicant making amendments to the parking layout, my constituents believe that they remain inadequate considering the amount of additional cars on the road. The argument has been set out that a large family would also have a lot of cars, but with the shift changes, 2 pool cars, 4 staff, handyman, gardener and visiting caregivers, it is no doubt that this development will cause more traffic and disruption than a large family would. It is mentioned in the report that shift changes would be at quiet times of the day. Speaking with the residents, this isn't true, as 7:30 is the busiest time for the road, with residents travelling to work and to school. The road is a home to many young families, and with no pavement on the road, it is a concern for children's safety walking to and from school with this additional traffic. No information has been given either regarding how the children housed in the development would get to school, as it is likely that they will be going to different schools in different directions in different vehicles. I would like to thank officers for their work on the application, and to Claire Hall in particular for meeting me and the residents on site. But in conclusion, I believe that we must consider the right development in the right place. And for me and the residents of the area, Uplands Road is the wrong place for this development, and I would ask the committee to refuse the application. Diolch yn fawr. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Yes, the Prime Officer would like to come back in. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Phillips, for your comments, and we note and it's always keen to get views from local residents and people who know the area. Obviously, they understand the context of applications a lot better than we do in terms of that. The application, as you see, is the property is already 7-bedroom house, so obviously it could operate as a large family home with lots of comings and goings and cars already. So in terms of, as you see in the assessment within the report, and if you allow me, I'll bring in our highways officer to comment on it as well in terms of the highways. But obviously what the assessment is this is not a brand new development, a change of use in an existing property. So obviously the assessment has to look at the fallback position, and the fallback position is a 7-bedroom dwelling, which the maximum number of car parking spaces we could allow for within that property is 3. The proposed property in terms of the assessment requires 4 car parking spaces, which the applicants can show they can provide. And in terms of, as we said, of the use of the property, it's to try and get children to live in a more residential environment. So it is within a use class that falls within C, which is a type of residential use, albeit outside of a residential dwelling use, which and that's the difference between C2 and C3. So our position is that whilst there will be comings and goings, we do not believe that those will be in excess or significantly different than that from a 7-bedroom family dwelling. And obviously there are traffic restrictions in place on the existing highway network. And just to come back on a point that was raised by another member at pre-briefing yesterday, in terms of things like refuse collection, because of the scale of it is quite small. The advice that I've been provided from the refuse is that that would just be dealt with as a residential dwelling, and refuse collections would still carry on as a residential dwelling. It wouldn't be classed as commercial. Thank you, Chair. And if I could just ask my colleague Joanna Weeks from Highways to come in, and she may be able to give you a little bit more information in terms of the assessment on the car parking numbers. Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Yes, the site has been assessed, as Chris mentioned, in terms of its current use as opposed to that of the proposed use as a sort of residential care home for children in the area. Basically, the assessment it meets all regulations, it meets our legislative, sorry, I can't get my words out, requirements as well in terms of the point of access off the Uplands Road. It's an established access to an existing residential property. It's provided with 2 driveway accesses, and it is provided with sufficient land within the curtilage of the site to perform a manoeuvre to reverse into the car parking spaces as provided on the submitted site layout plan, for all vehicles to exit in a forward gear, which gives the best opportunity in terms of visibility at the location of the existing access points. As previously mentioned, in terms of the type of development, it wouldn't sort of impact or have any significant impact on the trips generated by that of a larger family home in terms of taking children to school, for example, and receiving deliveries to the property as well. In terms of the actual location on that bend in the carriageway on the uplands, as you can see from the site photographs, there are traffic regulation orders in place there to keep that area completely clear, obviously to give the best sort of vertical and horizontal alignment visibility as you sort of manoeuvre along the carriageway there. Whereas it is accepted that there are no pedestrian footway provisions in place there, it is an established residential area. It has no recorded sort of road traffic collisions sort of involving pedestrians or vehicles on the uplands or the surrounding area, which sort of indicates that given the nature of the road, it's self-regulating in terms of speed and it's self-regulating in terms of safety with the residents that are using the access road at the time.
Thank you, Joanne.
Yeah, I've just put up the image, obviously showing the traffic regulation orders on that bend, just to highlight the controls that are in place already in that application.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
May I ask questions, please?
Yeah.
Was it doctor's surgery or did a doctor live there?
I believe it was a doctor's house.
Okay, so his family has lived there before? Okay.
There we are, right? Yeah.
Was the chat about the decision going on online in the chat?
Yeah.
You can allow that?
No, but obviously, just to be aware that obviously any members of the public who wish to speak at committee have the opportunity to register and speak. Obviously, whilst people may put questions or queries in the chat, obviously aware that we don't respond to any questions in the chat, and that obviously the councillor has made the representations.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just have one question for one point, please, Chair. The chat function really is to be used for IT issues.
Yeah.
So can any members of the public just refrain from using it unless they've got IT issues? Thank you.
Yes, okay, thank you. I will now take questions from members of the committee. Members, do you have any questions to ask officers? No. Now moving on to the recommendation, which starts at the bottom of page 17 of the report. And again, this application is stated as for approval. Could I have a proposer and seconder to consider the recommendation?
I move.
Okay, so that's proposed by Councillor Keogh and seconded by Councillor Bowen. So I'll now go through each member present to check if they've been present for the whole item and how they wish to vote. So Councillor Tim Bower, have you been present for the whole item and how do you wish to vote?
Yes, I've been present and I vote against.
Thank you. We've had apologies from Councillor Rosalind Davis. Councillor Nathan Goldup-John, have you been present?
Councillor Bowen came in earlier on to second the proposal.
Yes.
Now he's against.
Yes.
Yeah, sorry, Councillor Bowen, you proposed the recommendation or seconded the recommendation,
Right.
which is for approval.
Sorry, I vote for then. Excuse me a minute, I'm having problems with my computer a minute. I need to log out and come back in a minute, sorry.
Okay,
Come back.
we'll come back to Councillor Bowen, we'll come back to you when you join. I'll go through the rest of the members first, and then if you can join back at your earliest convenience, that'd be great, thank you. Right, so if we move to Councillor Rosalind Davis has given us apologies. Councillor Nathan Goldup-John, have you been present for the whole item and how do you wish to vote?
I've been present for the whole meeting and I vote in line with the officer's recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Cathy James, have you been present for the whole item and how do you wish to vote?
Yes, I've been present for the whole item and I vote in favour of the officer's recommendation.
Thank you. Chair, have you been present for the whole item and how do you wish to vote?
I vote for approval.
Thank you. Councillor Carl Jordan, have you been present for the whole item and how do you wish to vote?
Yes, I've been present for the item and I vote in favour of the recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Keogh, have you been present for the whole item and how do you wish to vote?
I've been present for the whole item and I'll be voting for the recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Suzanne Paddison, have you been present for the whole item and how do you wish to vote?
Yes, I have been present throughout and I will vote with the recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Phil Rogers, have you been present for the whole item and how do you wish to vote?
Unfortunately, I lost IT connection whilst Councillor Phillips was speaking for about half a minute. So I did miss a little bit of her talk, so I don't feel I can vote at this stage. Thank you.
Okay, so you're abstaining from the vote, essentially. And Councillor Sarah Thomas, have you been present for the whole item and how do you wish to vote?
I have been present for the whole item and I support the officer's recommendation.
Thank you. I can see Councillor Tim Bowen, you're back in the meeting.
I am, yes, and apologies for the cock up I made. Yes, I vote for it. Thank you.
Okay. So we've had one abstention.
I'm having a bit of a problem here today.
Okay, thank you. We've had one abstention and the rest of the committee has voted for the application. So I can confirm that application has been approved. Thank you.
Thank you, Chloe. The next application is detailed as agenda item 6 of the agenda.
Before we start, before we go into the item, Councillor Bowen, has he left?
Yeah, I'm about to leave.
So are you going to leave for this item because you've declared a prejudicial interest?
Yes, I'm leaving now.
I'll call you back in when this item is finished, okay?
Okay, no problems.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chloe.
I'm just confirming. Okay, and you can continue.
The next application is detailed as agenda item 6 of the agenda. It's application number E2023-02-101 Kimler Road, Neath. The report is set out on pages 21 to 30 and this application is recommended for approval. I would now like to ask the planning officer to take us through the report.
Chair. This application is T 2023-02. This is not a planning application. This application is for the confirmation of a tree preservation order for the 2 trees as identified on 111 Kimber Road, Neath. So the 2 trees are identified on the enclosed plan, T1 and T2. Just for context, this is the area that they're in, and the red marker indicates the location of the trees. You obviously see the trees identified there clearly with the B4287 fronting site. And these are the trees in question, and these photographs are taken from the main road fronting the site. So you will see in the report the consultation responses have been set out in terms of the issues that have been raised between safety, damaged property. All these have been identified on pages 23, 24 and 25 in terms of the responses, with the appraisal starting at the end of page 25 and going all the way through then to the recommendation on page 29. You will see obviously the trees are quite prominent within the wider landscape within the area. Just to give a bit of background, the emergency TPO was placed on the trees, and this application is to confirm that emergency order to make it permanent. Obviously, while the emergency order is in place, any works to the trees would require an application anyway. So in terms of the difference to the process remains the same. Anyone wishing to undertake any works to the trees or wishing to fell the trees would have to submit an application for tree works to a TPO, which are free. There are no charges to those applications. However, depending on the works and the extent, or whether they're felling and the justification for that, they would obviously have to have sufficient reports to be submitted to address those concerns. We've got another couple of sets of photographs, as you see from the other side on Kimber Road. You see the prominence of those trees within the wider landscape. And again, some other photographs of the trees. So in terms of the emergency order, the trees were assessed by the local authorities of horticulturists. It was considered that they're of high value in as species. There's no risk in terms of they're not dead, dying, dangerous, and in terms of the trees, they're estimated to have been approximately 90 years old, with a further lifespan of approximately 40 years. Whilst, as you note in the recommendation, we would they probably could do with an application for works being undertaken to remove some overhanging branches and cut back. There's no reason why those works can't be undertaken, maintain the long-term health and lifespan of the trees in question. So they've been assessed by a horticulturist. As far as visual amenity goes, obviously, I think the photographs speak for themselves. We consider, the planning officers consider they add significant value to the wider landscape in terms of the setting of those trees. We've also had our tree officer in ecology assess the trees, and they put an estimated value on the trees in terms of their embedded carbon and their ecological value of approximately 100,000 for the 2 trees. Obviously, as we're aware, trees embed carbon, they're good for air quality and ecology, and while that's not necessarily a assessment that we would undertake in terms of the TPO itself, which is purely on the quality of the tree and the visual amenity of the tree, it is obviously a value in the area, and you will note the assessment that's been made on page 27 of the report that sets out in terms of canopy cover within this ward and in terms of loss of trees in this area generally. You will note our recommendation, and the recommendation is for approval with a further recommendation that we write to the owners of the tree, which in this case are Titarian, with recommendation that they do submit an application to undertake works to the trees that in our view would address some of the concerns that have been raised by local residents in terms of overhanging branches and nuisance in terms of the trees themselves. It is also worth noting that obviously until an emergency protection is put in place or a permanent order put in place, the trees can be felled with no requirement for anyone to replace trees. Obviously, if an application was submitted to fell the trees and was considered to be acceptable, then the local authority has powers then to require replacement planting. But if the order is not confirmed and the order falls away, then obviously there's no ability of the local authority to require enforced replanting for those trees.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Chris. I will now welcome the local ward member to come in at this point. Councillor Rees, would you like to say anything?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for allowing me to attend this meeting. This whole saga about these trees has been difficult. It's been difficult for me because I was omitted from any documentation. I was omitted from any site visits or anything. So I knew nothing about this whole thing until I had a phone call whilst I was on a holiday to attend a meeting, a Teams meeting, and we were presented with the facts as laid out in the report. If I had been aware of the background to all this, I certainly would have made my views strongly, as I feel that my fellow councillor would also have made his views strongly at that meeting. I wasn't made aware. I wasn't aware. I was absolutely cold to that meeting. Since that time, I've been inundated with requests from residents to get these trees removed. And you can see from the report and the photographs of the damage that these trees cause. The resident in 107 Kimler Road has had his home flooded on 2 occasions because of the deposits from these trees, which have blocked gutters and hence caused damage to his property by flooding. I've been a councillor for 32 years. And it was drilled into me when I started as a councillor that the health and safety of residents was one of the priorities that a councillor should actually consider. The residents from 113 down to 107 are constantly in fear of these trees falling. The report is not actually truthful because it actually says that they had no documentation from residents about the damage these trees are causing. That is certainly not true. And I found that out since. It concerns me that residents are in fear of these trees, and I've been told that children are losing sleep, particularly in high winds when these trees are actually blown and creaking and so on. The documentation also says that Titanium did not submit any requests. That again is not true. I had an email only this week from Titanium, and I got it here, to say that they actually put in a request to have these trees removed. Ken, if you allow me, I can read out exactly what was said.
Yes, Councillor, yes.
Thank you, Chair. It's come from Mr. Chris Jones, who's the Senior Operations Supervisor at Titanium. He says, I emailed the local authority directly on the 9th of the 6th, 23 at 11:15 a.m. with the reasons why I wanted these trees removed. I believe this was well inside the appeal time frame. I asked that my requirement for the trees to be removed be considered when a decision is being made on the TPO. The report actually says that no report has come from Titanium, so that's not true. I also want to raise, Chair, why has the monetary value of these trees been included in this report? I've never seen this in a report in all the years I've been a councillor. Does this mean now that every tree in the county borough is going to have a monetary value put on it before it's considered if there's TPO or whatever? That has only been put in the report to try to give reasons why these trees should remain. I am left with the view that a decision was made to put these, when Titanium wanted to chop these trees down or remove these trees, and there was damage to 11 Kimler Road because of these trees, and the whole pine end of that house had to be renovated by Titanium. That's why they wanted them removed. These trees do nothing to enhance the landscape. They cause damage. They cause mental health problems to my residents. And I feel, Chair, that they should be removed. And if I had been involved because of the inadequacies of the officers in getting me involved initially, then I would have made that clear at that meeting that we had, excuse me, had in June on Teams. So that is my case, Chair, and I would ask the committee refuse the TPO.
Thank you, Councillor Neath.
Thank you, Chair. Just obviously picking up some of the points just for clarification. We note that we have had a response from Titarian. What that response says is that they hope that we take into account the scale of the trees and the size of them, but doesn't actually object to it. We can provide you with a copy of the email that we've had following the meeting, but they do respond, and they do say that they wish to take account of the location and scale of the trees when we make our recommendation. If I can just finish. So that's why it's not stated. It doesn't actually state within that email that we've received that they object. In terms of the councillor's involvement in the process, obviously when we place an emergency TPO on a tree, it is in cases of emergency. So we are made aware that those trees are at risk. We don't go through a process of informing everyone in advance before we put that emergency order on. Because if we did say next week we're going to put a TPO on, then it's very likely that those trees are gone by the time that order is in place. The meeting that you refer to that you were asked to attend is this usual panel process. So obviously if we receive objections on an emergency order, prior to us confirming that order within the relevant timescale, we then contact local members and advise them of the number of objections to clarify whether they're then happy to confirm the order or not. And that is the meeting that you were then asked to attend to. I understand that one of the other local members in the area was made aware of the TPO because neighbours were aware of it and contacted them directly because they received correspondence once that order was in place. But we don't contact local members before we put emergency orders for the reasons that I've explained. In terms of the monetary value, obviously, we as an authority, we've declared a climate emergency, and we have officers in our ecology section who can now do this work, whereas previously we didn't. This is a value that is put on the trees and is used often in cases where people have now felled trees that were protected by tree preservation order, and a judge is trying to consider, because they undertook those works and they're being prosecuted, is in terms of assessing what fines that they could be put on those people, and that assessment is something that is used in that case. So we've put it in the report for people to understand what value those trees have in order to understand the impacts of the potential loss, but obviously for people to understand the consequences of obviously undertaking works as well to trees that are protected. In terms of the comments that you've made regarding the reports that have been submitted, I would only draw your attention to the current position and the proposed position. If it's exactly the same. So the position and the route that anyone would need to go down under the existing temporary order that's in place, or if this was permanent, is exactly the same. And on the standard application forms from Welsh Government, it clearly sets out reasons for any works or justified felling, and then it says in there that if alleged subsidence damage or damage to property is proposed, then a full report by an engineer or surveyor, together with one from a tree professional, including the damage, subsoil type, shrinkage potential, etc., etc., etc. So there are set procedures in place. There is nothing under the current position as a temporary order, or if this was confirmed, that would prevent anyone from going through that whole process, either, as we've said, undertaking works to that tree to remove overhanging branches. We deal with hundreds of these every year, or an application to fell with sufficient information that would be that would make it a valid application in line with what Welsh Government has set as the requirements to be submitted in an application. And obviously, as stated, if then that evidence shows that these trees are causing substance damage or damage to property, and that is agreed, then the authority can then also consider replanting as part of that.
Thank you. Councillor Rees?
Yes, thank you, Chair. On the fact that I wasn't included, my fellow councillor was included in reports and site visits, I believe. I wasn't. I had nothing at all. I know I received an apology from the officer who indicated that it was an omission. I accepted that apology, but it still doesn't make the fact that I wasn't included. And I think that is wrong. On the fact of the value of those trees, when is that asset value going to be realized? It's meaningless. So that asset value is meaningless because you're never going to realize it. So, you know, I don't know why it's in the report, Chair. The other issue is, as I said, is the health and welfare of the residents were affected. And there are lots of, and there must be 7, 8, 9, 10 residents who put in objections, and that has been set, you know, just dismissed, set aside. That is wrong. Our residents are important, and they're important to me. And I think that the only reason that I'm making this plea is because of the damage that's been done to those houses. Titarian will confirm the damage that's been done. The resident in 107 has sent in photographs of the damage that's been done. I've been there to see what the damage, and that's not right. That's been caused by the trees. The resident in 113, his wall is being damaged, and that again is because of root damage of these trees, and that's the reason why, Chair, I believe these trees should not be protected by a TPO. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Rees. Yeah. I will now take questions from the members of the committee. Members, do you have any questions to ask the officers? Councillor Keogh.
I've been looking at this and I've been fascinated because I've read through the report twice over the weekend. I believe a site visit by this committee would be in order. Now, Scott, a Corsican pine is a beautiful tree, fabulous examples of it down in Margam Park, where they belong, but not in a residential setting. It's a very poor specimen to start with. And a Scots pine next to it is totally incongruous in its surroundings. Now, I can understand why these people have fear of it. Now and again, we get storms that are horrific because of the situation on the coast we live on. The prevailing wind is southwest. There is nothing here between here and Brazil to stop that weather coming in. And when it does come in, it's only a matter of time before that tree will bend and eventually give way. No matter how our people tell us how healthy it is. By living under one, the mental pressure and the mental torture, horrendous. So therefore, with the members' permission, I would ask for a site visit for us in the committee to see the situation.
Chris?
I would just draw members' attention to the photographs within the report. As we've provided, we've got various pictures within the report of the trees. I do not consider that we would personally see anything different than we can see within the photographs that we've provided as what the trees are, the size of them in comparison to the properties. I accept the fact that living with trees of that scale is is an issue, but as we've clarified, the trees could do with some work, and standing on site isn't going to reassess the value of those trees in terms of their health and well-being has been assessed by a professional officer of the authority who considers them in good condition, and that yes, they could do with some work. But I don't say I don't really see what we would get more than what we've provided you within the report as to what we would see on site. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Yeah. Are there any other members who've got questions, please? Oh, sorry,
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, this is a difficult one. It's a toughie, but we had a similar situation in Baglan a while ago, and we did actually have a site visit there, which turned out not to give too much extra information. I mean, we stood underneath it and we could see the tree, but I don't believe that I'm an expert in trees, and if I was standing under the tree, I would be able to see the residents' point of view, definitely. But I believe that if we were to go with the recommendation on this, there would be no harm to anybody, especially the tree. And going forward, if Titarian wanted to work on it, remove it, as the officer says, removal of the tree is not set in stone. No, the non-removal of the tree. You can actually take the tree down, even if it has got a TPO. But what we would do then is make sure that the process is legal and proper. So I'm not really in favour of standing under the big tree because I know what that looks like. And I can understand the residents' point of view, but eloquently by the local member. But I believe that the best course of action for this would be to follow the recommendation, and then Titarian are under legal obligation to go through the process properly. And if that involves a more in-depth exploration of subsidence or misuse, not misuse, but the trees have harmed the buildings, then if that can be established, then the council will have been able to stick by the planning rules and regulations laid down by Welsh Government, and also listened to the residents. And Titarian would, at the end of the day, still have been able to remove the tree if it were proved to be dangerous. So that is the line of action that I think is the best, really, today, to take into account everybody's thoughts on it, because the only person who I would call on at the moment was to be an arborealist or an expert in the field of trees, and whether or not that tree was likely to come down, whether or not it's likely to come down in a storm, I don't know. So to me, the best course of action would be to confirm the emergency order, which does not preclude it being felled in time, but would allow the council to do things properly. Thank you, Chairman.
I will actually concur with my colleague.
Thank you. Bring Chris back in. Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Patterson. I'm just bringing up your section of the actual application form that I mentioned earlier. As you see, it's set out there that you can provide the details of the justification for the works that are being proposed, and it obviously sets out there what the requirements are. Those are set by Welsh Government, not ourselves, in terms of those requirements. In terms of the position, we are not saying that currently, with the structural report, any Titarian or anyone else could submit an application that could prove to us tomorrow that these trees are causing damage to properties. To be clear, there's a difference between causing subsidence damage to properties or physical damage to properties that's resulting in something, than managing maintenance of your property due to the fact that you live in near trees that shed leaves or pine needles or whatever they do. We've had other applications in the authority where people wish to fell trees because they've had enough of breaking up leaves or sap going on their car, which is not a justified reason to remove a tree that was there before their houses. So just to reiterate what Councillor Patterson said, the position is still anyone, not just Titarian, obviously Titarian own the trees, but anyone can apply for works to those trees. Anyone can get an arboriculturalist to put forward a recommendation of works, or they can get a structural report done that would prove if these trees were causing damage. Now, ultimately, what no protection means both trees could be felled with no replacement and no justification as set out by Welsh Government on those forms. But we're also talking about 2 trees. So it may well be that the recommendation in the future may be that one of them is causing the damage and the other one isn't, and one gets felled and one gets kept. We can't predict obviously what those reports would say, but that is still in place. It still goes through the process, and for clarity, and we have had them in the past, even if we were to recommend refusal, because that information in our view was insufficient for us to recommend approval of the felling, there is still an appeals process to pay. So they still have an opportunity to appeal any decision we make. So obviously we've had cases in the past where someone has significantly reduced the scale of the tree through works, which we consider would damage its long-term health and end up with the tree being felled in the future. We've recommended refusal and they've gone to appeal on those applications, so it's assessed independently. So there's still a lot of stages that people can go through. And as I said earlier, apart from getting the various reports to be submitted, the actual application, because obviously the TPO has been put in place for the local authority, is free. There's no charge to that application. Anyone can apply. They just need consent by the tree owner to actually undertake those works themselves. And obviously, you know, if Titarian choose to not do any works to those trees in the future, I'm not a legal person, but I assume that if branches fall off the tree that cause damage to a property and they can prove that Titarian haven't maintained their property and trees appropriately, there's recourse through the courts and liability for that process, I would assume.
Thank you. Councillor Rees.
Just to come back to that, 2 of these properties are in private ownership. And those are the 2 properties which have had the most damage. So I just wanted to make that, and it is a real mental strain on those residents with the fear of what's happening. You know, not only the falling of the trees, but I know in my own property where I got a tree with a branch just comes off, and then we've seen photos in other parts of where the branches or the tree just falls. These trees do not enhance the visual, of the area at all. They're horrible things. That's my opinion, of course, but they do not enhance. They just make a nuisance, and it's not right that residents should have to put up with that nuisance.
Thank you, Councillor Rees. Yes. Are there any more questions? No.
Councillor Keogh, just checking in terms of when you earlier discussed the site visit, are you still wanting to propose that?
The officer's explanation.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Before you go to the recommendation, given the comments of the residents, it is further recommended. So on the actual recommendation that we'll be voting on today, we are, as a council, recommending that Titarian take action on the trees. So we're not just leaving it. We're not protecting the trees, leaving the residents, abandoning them, put it that way. We are making a further recommendation that they actually take action on the trees. Yeah.
Yes, Councillor. I mean, we are obviously Titarian are aware anyway.
Yeah.
But we will.
We need to be forced.
Our arboriculturalist considers the trees are worthy of protection and are good quality, but they could do their work to it, as we all could. But, and our recommendation would be that they probably get someone to assess it. What that, and just for the local member to be aware, what that should also give comfort to is obviously if Titarian go there and get their arboriculturist or 18 there to look at the tree, if there's any weaknesses in any branches or any recommendations they make for safety, that would also be considered under that process. And obviously, if in the future they consider that they want to go down the lines of getting a structural engineer to look at potential issues, damage, etc., they can go down that route as well. But I think that at least that would give you the comfort that someone they've inspected independently, they've assessed it, and anything that they think is dangerous. Obviously, you know, we have had cases in the past where we get calls that trees have become dangerous following a storm. In that case, and just that, you know, that's probably worth clearing up as well. If a tree is protected by tree preservation order, if it becomes dead, dying, or dangerous due to action, you know, due to weather or age or whatever, then it doesn't need to go through the formal TPO process. What happens is the arboriculturist go out there and look at it. If they agree, yes, that tree is dead, it's now dangerous, it needs to come down, he gives them authorization and confirms that to us. So it's email correspondence back and forth with a confirmation, and then it can be felled immediately without having to go through the whole consultation process. So I hope that just gives you a little bit of comfort that there's still a lot of options open.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you. Right. Now moving on to the recommendation, which is on page 29 of the report. And again, this application is stated as for approval. Could I have a proposer and a seconder to consider the recommendation?
I'll move to.
Thank you.
Councillor Sarah Thomas.
I'll
Sorry?
second.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Could you please ask each member if they have been present for the whole of this item and how they wish to vote, please?
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, as we know, Councillor Bowen stepped out with a prejudicial interest. Councillor Nathan Goldett-John, have you been present for the whole item? How do you wish to vote?
I have been present for the whole item and I vote in line with the officer's recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Cathy James, have you been present for the whole item and how do you wish to vote?
I've been present for the whole item and I vote in favour of the officer's recommendations.
Chair, have you been present for the whole item and how do you wish to vote?
I have been present and I vote for approval.
Councillor Carl Jordan, have you been present for the whole item and how do you wish to vote?
Yes, I've been present for the whole item and I vote against the recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Keogh, have you been present for the whole item and how do you wish to vote?
I've been present at the entire meeting and I vote for.
Councillor Paddison, have you been present for the whole item and how do you wish to vote?
I have been present throughout and I'll vote for the recommendation.
Councillor Phil Rogers, have you been present for the whole item and how do you wish to vote?
Yes, this time I have been present for the whole item and I'm in favour of the resolution.
Thank you. And Councillor Sarah Thomas, have you been present for the whole item and how do you wish to vote?
I have been present for the whole item and I wish to vote in favour of the officer recommendation.
Thank you. So just to confirm, we had one voting against and the rest for, so I can confirm that recommendation has been approved. And before we move on, Chair, I'll just try and call Councillor Bowen back into the meeting.
Yes. Now we move on to section B of the agenda, which is matters for information. Agenda items 7, 8 and 9, which detail the appeals determined, appeals received and delegated decisions on the 19th of April 2023 to the 24th of July 2023. As Chair, I can confirm that we put the information contained within these reports. Final item is agenda item 8, which is urgent items. I can confirm we have no urgent items today. There are no further items, so that ends the business for today. Thank you all for attending.